Hi everybody, this is your narrator Ali, and I hope you are ready to relax to our story today. Tonight, we follow a stubborn young fellow who dares to walk all the way to the North Wind's own house to demand justice, and who discovers along the way that gifts, like storms, can change shape depending on the hearts that meet them. Chapter 1. Meal on the Steps. In a small, weather-beaten cottage at the edge of the world, or so it seemed, there lived an old widow and her only son. The hills around them rose bare and gray, and beyond those hills the sea lay cold and restless. The wind knew that cottage well. It rattled the shutters in winter and combed the fields in summer, but none visited more fiercely than the north wind. The widow, though once strong and quick, had grown frail. Her hands trembled when she lifted the flour sack, and there were days when walking from hearth to bed left her breathless. So the burden of fetching and carrying fell more and more to her son, a sturdy lad with clear eyes and a heart that thought things ought to be fair in this world. One morning, when the sky was bright but the air sharp as a blade, the widow asked her son to bring meal from the safe for their porridge. The safe stood up a short flight of stone steps, snug against the outer wall, where the grain stayed cool and dry. The lad climbed up, scooped meal into a wooden bowl, and turned to carry it down. As he stepped out, there came a howl from the north. A blast of cold air roared down from the heights, seizing his clothes, his hair, and, worst of all, the bowl. In a whirl of white dust, the meal leapt into the air and vanished, scattered across sky and heath. The lad blinked, his hands suddenly empty. "Well," he muttered, "that was ill done." He went back into the safe, filled the bowl again, and stepped carefully onto the threshold. But the north wind was waiting. With another mighty puff, it swooped in, snatched the meal, and tossed it high, laughing in its wild, wordless way as it flew on. The lad coughed, brushing flour from his eyelashes. "Once may be mischance," he said. "Twice is mischief." He tried a third time, teeth set, arms wrapped around the bowl. Once more, the north wind came driving down, harder than ever. The bowl spun from his grasp, meal flying like snow. This time, anger flared in him. It was not only the effort wasted, but the thought of his mother sitting inside, thin and patient, waiting for food that would not come. "That does it," he said aloud. "It is a hard thing that the north wind should steal from those who have so little. If he is bold enough to come to our door, I can be bold enough to go to his." He wiped his hands, shut the safe, and told his mother where he meant to go. "It is far," she warned, worry in her eyes. "The north wind's house stands beyond lands we do not know." "All the same," he replied, "I will not sit here and starve while he blows our meal away. I shall ask him for what is right." She looked at the determination in his face and said no more, only blessed him and wrapped his cloak tighter about his shoulders. Chapter 2. The House of the North Wind. The lad set off, heading always toward the cold horizon where the sky grew pale and sharp. He climbed stony slopes and crossed valleys where little grew but moss and scrub. The farther he went, the keener the air became, until his breath smoked in front of him, even though the sun still shone. He walked for a long time, through one day and into the next, until the land turned strange. The rocks were carved into sharp ridges, as if some gigantic hand had gouged them, and the few trees stood bent all one way, their branches pointing south like pleading arms. At last he saw it, a great hall of ice and stone at the foot of a glacier, its roof creaking with frost. Clouds streamed past its chimneys, and around it eddies of snow danced in the air, though no snow fell from the sky. This must be the place, he thought. He knocked at the heavy door. A blast of cold air nearly knocked him backward as it opened. Inside he saw a vast chamber with rafters made of frozen mist and walls that glimmered with frost flowers. At the far end, on a seat carved out of packed snow, sat the North Wind himself, huge and gray-bearded, his cloak made of storm clouds and his hair trailing like shreds of fog. "Good day to you," said the lad, trying not to shiver, "and thank you kindly for visiting our house yesterday, though I could have wished the visit a gentler one." The North Wind's voice came like the roar of distant surf. "Good day," he replied, "and thanks for coming all this way to see me. Few mortals trouble themselves to knock at my door. What is it you seek?" The lad squared his shoulders. "I have come to ask for my rights," he said. "3 times you took our meal as I stepped from the safe, and you know well we have but little to live on. If you keep snatching away the morsel we have, my mother and I will be left with nothing but hunger." The North Wind scratched his icy beard. "As for the meal," he said, "what is scattered cannot be gathered again. I blow where I must, yet I do not wish to see folks starve. If what you need is food, that can be arranged." He reached behind his icy seat and drew forth a folded cloth. "Take this," he told the lad. "Whenever you are hungry, spread it on a table and say the words I shall teach you. It will lay out for you every kind of good dish your heart can desire." The lad's eyes widened. "That is more than fair payment," he said, astonished. "See that you do not waste it," the North Wind replied. The lad thanked him, tucked the cloth under his arm, and turned back toward home, feeling hopeful despite the long road before him. Chapter 3. The Inn at the Crossroads. The journey back was as long as the journey out, and the lad soon saw that he would not reach home before nightfall. As dusk settled, he came to an inn standing at a crossroads, its windows glowing with firelight. He decided to rest there. Inside, the common room was warm and full of the smells of smoke and stew. Travelers sat at rough tables talking quietly. The innkeeper and his wife moved among them, carrying jugs and bowls. "Welcome," said the landlady, eyeing the lad's empty hands and travel-worn clothes. "Will you be wanting supper and a bed?" "Yes," he replied, "though I can see you have many mouths to feed. Perhaps I may help with that." He went to a small table in the corner, laid his cloth upon it, and said in a clear voice, "Cloth, spread yourself, and set forth all manner of good food." No sooner were the words spoken than dishes appeared, one after another, roasts and stews, fresh bread, cheeses, fruits, sweets he could scarcely name. The table groaned under the bounty. The room fell silent. The travelers stared. The innkeeper's wife clasped her hands in delight. "Eat with me," the lad invited. "There is more than enough for all." They needed no second bidding. Laughter and talk soon filled the room as they crowded around the miraculous table. The lad himself ate heartily, pleased at the thought of showing his mother such wonders on the morrow. Later that night, when everyone had gone to bed and the house was still, the landlady crept back into the common room, candle in hand. She stood for a long moment, looking at the folded cloth lying on the table where the lad had left it. "What a blessing it would be," she whispered, "to have such a thing in a place like this. No more worrying about the cost of meat or the price of flour. Guests from far and near would fill our house. Temptation tugged at her. Quietly, she fetched another cloth from her linen chest, one the same size and color. She laid it where the lad's cloth had been and slipped his into her apron, her heart beating fast. By morning, she had almost convinced herself that it was no theft, only a small exchange. The lad woke, thanked his hosts for their kindness, took the cloth he believed was his, and set out again without suspecting a thing. Chapter 4. A miraculous cloth that was not. By midday he reached his cottage. His mother, who had feared he might never return, greeted him with tears of relief. "Well," she said when she could speak steadily, "what did the north wind say to you?" "He is a harsher fellow than some, but not unfair," the lad answered. "He could not bring back the scattered meal, yet he gave me this cloth. When I spread it on a table and say the words he taught me, it sets out food of every kind. We need never go hungry again." His mother raised an eyebrow. "Words are easy," she replied. "I will believe in this marvel when I see it with my own eyes." "Very well," he said, laughing. "You shall see it at once." He drew out their rough table, smoothed the cloth upon it, and spoke eagerly. "Cloth, spread yourself, and set forth all manner of good food." They waited. Nothing happened. He repeated the words. The cloth lay still, as dull as any ordinary piece of linen. His mother folded her arms. "I thought as much," she said, though without unkindness. "It is a long road to travel for an empty cloth." The lad stared in shock, then anger. "This cannot be," he muttered. "The north wind is many things, but he is not a liar. Somehow I have been cheated." He folded the useless cloth, set it aside, and turned to his mother. "Do not fear," he said. "I will go back and ask again for what is right. We still need meal as much as before." She sighed, but she knew better than to stand between her son and his sense of justice. He took up his cloak once more and set out on the long road to the north wind's house. Chapter 5. The Golden Ram. By the time he reached the icy hall again, the light was already dimming. "Good evening," he called, stepping into the cold shine of the north wind's house. "Good evening," rumbled the north wind. "Back so soon? Did the cloth not serve you well?" "It served me not at all," the lad replied. "It may have been full of wonders when you gave it, but by the time I reached home, it would not produce even a crust. I ask again for my rights, for the meal you took." The north wind's breath gusted like a sigh. "I have no meal to give you," he said. "What has been blown away cannot be fetched back. As for the cloth, if trickery has been done between here and your house, that is not my doing. But I will not send you away empty. Look yonder." In a side stall, tethered with a rope of frost, stood a ram with curling horns and bright eyes. "That beast," said the north wind, "is no common animal. When you stand before it and say, 'Ram, ram, make money,' it will shake its fleece, and coins of true gold will fall at your feet. With such a friend, you and your mother need never lack for anything." The lad's anger softened. "That is a gift indeed," he said. "Thank you." He led the ram out into the sharp air and turned toward home once more. Night came on before he had gone far, and once again he saw the warm glow of the inn at the crossroads. Chapter 6. The Second Theft. Inside the inn, the same landlord and landlady bustled about. They greeted the lad with surprised delight. "Back so soon?" the innkeeper asked. "Yes," the lad answered. "I am on my way home again. This time I have no need of your supper. I carry wealth enough with me." The innkeeper's eyes flicked to the ram. "A handsome animal," he said carelessly. "Is it for sale?" "Not for anything you could offer," the lad replied with a smile. "Watch, and you will see why." He led the ram to a corner and murmured, "Ram, Ram, make money." At once the animal shook itself, and bright gold coins tumbled to the floor, ringing musically as they fell. The innkeeper's jaw dropped. "By my roof," he thought, "a beast that brings forth gold would make a poor man rich, and a rich man richer. Guests would never lack for comfort if I had such a ram." Later that night, when all had gone to bed and the house was quiet, the landlord crept out to the stable. He led away the magical ram and replaced it with another ram of the same color and size, one that could bleat and graze, but do nothing more. In the morning, the lad thanked his hosts, tied a rope around the horns of the ram he believed was his, and walked away. By the time he reached home, his heart was light. He imagined his mother's eyes widening at the sight of the falling gold. "Once again," he told her, "the north wind has shown himself a rough companion, but a generous one. He has given me a ram that can coin golden ducats whenever I bid it." "All may be as you say," she answered, "but I will not believe that money grows from wool until I have seen it with my own eyes." "Then look now," he said proudly. He set the ram before them and commanded, "Ram, Ram, make money." The animal gave him a mild, puzzled stare and chewed thoughtfully. No coins appeared. He tried again, louder. The ram flicked its ears and stamped a hoof. His mother sighed. "It seems we are as poor as ever," she said. The lad's face burned with anger and shame. "This is too much," he declared. "A man may be fooled once, but not twice. If there is trickery at work, I will see whose hand guides it." He turned on his heel and headed once more toward the land of frost. Chapter 7. The Stick That Would Not Be Cheated. For the third time, the long road unrolled beneath his feet. The rocky slopes, the bent trees, the cold air pushing against him. When he reached the North Wind's house at last, the Great Spirit regarded him with a mixture of irritation and respect. "You are persistent," the North Wind said. "What grievance brings you now?" "The ram you gave me," the lad answered, "was no better than any other by the time I reached home. It would not coin a single ducat. Twice now I have gone back to my mother with promises that turned to dust. I will not call you unjust, but I must have something that will see me righted at last." The North Wind frowned, icy brows knotting. "If others steal from you," he said, "it is not my fault. Yet I see you will not rest until the scales are balanced. I have nothing left to give you but that old stick in the corner. It looks plain enough, but heed what I say. If you speak the words, 'Stick, stick, lay on,' it will strike whomever stands before it. It will not stop until you say, 'Stick, stick, now stop.'" The lad looked at the stick. "Will it serve me better than the cloth or the ram?" he asked. "That depends," the North Wind replied, "on how you use it." The lad took up the stick, feeling its solid weight in his hand. Even a plain branch is something, he thought, and if it does as the North Wind says, perhaps I can earn back more than cloth and ram. As before, the road home was long, and evening found him once again at the familiar inn. Chapter 8. Justice at the Inn. The innkeeper and his wife were on the doorstep when the lad arrived. They greeted him with smiles, but there was a tightness in their eyes, as if they were not entirely at ease. "Welcome back, friend," the landlord said. "Will you stay tonight with us again?" "I will," said the lad. "It seems your house lies exactly between me and my home. I am weary of walking past your door." He went inside, laid his stick down on the bench beside him, and stretched out as if very tired. Before long, he began to snore, loudly, convincingly. The innkeeper watched him from the doorway. "That stick," he thought, "is no common cudgel. The north wind gave him the cloth and the ram, and this is the third gift. It must have some virtue. If I had it, and the ram and the cloth, we should never know hardship again." He crept into the room, carrying another stick of similar shape. Step by step he moved closer to the bench where the lad lay. Just as his hand reached out to take the north wind stick, the sleeping lad opened his eyes and shouted, "Stick, stick, lay on!" At once the stick leapt from his side as if it had life of its own, and began to rain blows upon the landlord's back and shoulders. The innkeeper yelped and danced, trying to dodge the flailing rod. "Stop! Stop!" he cried, shattering chairs and knocking over stools in his wild attempts to escape. The stick followed, thwacking him soundly each time he tried to duck or grab it. The landlady hurried in, aghast, but when she tried to intervene, the stick swatted her hands and drove her back. "Make it stop!" the landlord shouted. "I beg you, call it off, or it will beat me to death." "Perhaps," the lad said calmly, "it should beat a little longer. I have lost a cloth that gave food and a ram that gave gold in his house. Such losses make a long account." The stick, taking this as approval, laid on with even more vigor. At last, when the landlord was limping and bruised and his pride more battered than his body, he gasped, "If you will stop that cursed stick, you shall have back what you lost, both the cloth and the ram, and welcome." The lad considered. "That sounds nearer to justice," he said. "Stick, stick, now stop." Obediently, the stick fell still and dropped to the floor as lifeless as any ordinary piece of wood. Groaning, the landlord staggered to a cupboard and drew out the true cloth, then limped to the stable and led forth the golden ram, its eyes bright and untroubled. "Take them," he muttered, "and take that stick as well for all I care. Only keep it far from my back." The lad gathered up the cloth, tucked it safely into his pack, took up the stick, and tied the rope of the real ram around his hand. "Farewell," he said, not unkindly. "Treat the next traveler with more honesty, and such sticks may never trouble you again." Then he walked out into the night, the stars sharp overhead, the ram trotting behind. Chapter 9. Home with Wind-Wrought Wonders. The road seemed shorter now that he walked it with his rights restored. By late the next day he stood once more at his cottage door. His mother saw him coming and hurried out. "Well, my son," she said anxiously, "what news from the north wind this time? I feared that harsh spirit might have blown you clean away." "Do not fear," he answered, smiling. "The north wind is rough, but he is not unjust. And as for other folk, I have learned how to deal with them if they prove too clever by half." He set the cloth upon the table, smoothing it carefully. "Watch now, mother," he said. He spoke the words, and this time the cloth stirred as though a breeze had passed over it. Dishes appeared, food hot and fragrant, more than they had seen at one time in many years. The widow's eyes filled with tears. "Truly," she murmured, "this is a marvel." "Not the only one," he replied. He led the ram into the corner of the room and said softly, "Ram, ram, make money." The animal shook its fleece, and bright coins clinked onto the floor, rolling to rest at his mother's feet. She gasped and picked one up, turning it in the light. "This will buy meal enough for a lifetime," she whispered. "More than that," he said, "but we will not squander it. We have learned, I think, how quickly recklessness can empty a safe or a barrel. As for the stick, he set it by the door. We may never need it again," he said, "but it is good to know that if any man thinks to cheat us now, we have more than words to teach him better manners." The cottage, which had once been draughty and bare, soon grew warmer and well kept. The widow's cheeks grew fuller, her steps stronger. The lad worked still, for honest labor pleased him, but he no longer had to fear that one gust of wind could steal tomorrow's meal. And as for the north wind, he continued to blow where he pleased, across seas and mountains, over forests and fields. But whenever his gusts rattled the shutters of that little house, they sounded almost like rough laughter, as if some part of him remembered the stubborn lad who had dared to demand his rights. Closing reflection. Walking into the wind. The story of the lad who went to the north wind is a tale of persistence, justice, and the strange shapes that help can take. Our young hero does not accept his misfortune in silence. When the wind robs him of his meal, he does not sit down and curse his luck. He ties his cloak and walks toward the very source of his trouble, through cold and distance, to speak his case. Many of us, faced with losses we cannot explain, do the opposite. We turn inward or we grumble at the nearest person rather than seeking out the real cause. The north wind is not gentle, yet he is not heartless. Each gift he gives, the cloth, the ram, the stick, mirrors a different part of life. There is provision for hunger, wealth for poverty, and finally, a tool for setting wrongs right when others cheat us. But each gift also tests the lad. Can he be wise as well as hopeful, cautious as well as trusting? The unkind innkeeper and his wife remind us that temptation often comes dressed as opportunity. They want the blessings without the honesty that should go with them. In the end, it is the plainest gift, the stick, that brings justice, because it forces them to feel, quite literally, the blows their greed would have dealt to someone else's life. Perhaps, listening to this story, you can sense where in your own life you are called to be like the lad, to walk into the wind instead of turning your back on it, to ask clearly for what is fair, and to keep going even after one or two disappointments. And perhaps you also hear a warning against the innkeeper's path, to take the easy advantage, to slip something into your pocket when no one is looking. Stories like this remind us that what is taken that way never truly stays with us in peace. As you drift toward rest, may you carry with you the courage to face what feels bigger than you are, the wisdom to recognize true gifts from false ones, and the steady sense that even when the wind blows hard, there may be a way through if you're willing to keep walking. This is your narrator, Allie, thanking you for sharing this journey and wishing you calm nights, fair weather, and, when storms do come, a brave heart to meet them. For more stories that can help you relax, don't forget to like and subscribe.